Okay, before we move away from this, where is the Kudlow? Oh, here it is. We're going to briefly talk about Larry Kudlow. Kudlow, everyone's favorite drunk Trump administration government official, now at Fox Business, still fucking hammered. Let's see what this lush has to say about the bank run.
It was reported that Silicon Valley Bank had to pay up over 5% to attract uninsured deposits.
Chicken.
So that's a huge asset liability mismatch, right? Treasury bonds yielding 3.5%, 4%. Well, where was Mary Daly and her team at the San Francisco Fed while all this incredibly inept management was butchering the bank? Then you read about a $5 billion one-chunk investment in some kind of climate fund that was completely untested, and Lord knows what other left-wing romping was going on in these woke banks. And by the way, San Francisco Fed head Mary Daly is considered herself to be quite a wokester. The new House Republican Financial Services Committee Chair Patrick McHenry should haul Mary Daly and some of the other regions.
Back in my day, when I used to show up drunk and slap the secretary's ass, I could get away with it. Now they call it sexual harassment. Well, guess what? Wokeism is no good. That's why I always say these wokesters are jokesters. And we need to put an end to that. These woke banks, they need to stop. Do you eat breakfast before going live? No.
Regional Fed bank heads in front of his committee and find out what the heck they were doing while these banks were making bad, crazy decisions. And finally, the root cause of this bank crisis, namely the worst inflation in 40 years, spurred by the biggest spending spree from the Biden Democrats and the money-printing accommodation by the early inflation denier Jay Powell, all that inflation
literally happened under his watch. What? Bro, what he's talking about happened under his watch, under Donald Trump. That was his administration. Yo, that's awesome. He literally said the woke Biden-induced inflation. That's like, this is the guy. He's one of the guys. That's fucking, that's so sick. That's so sick.
Inflation continues. Today's consumer price report shows the third straight month of higher than expected inflation. Last autumn, the month-over-month trends were falling. Now, since November, the month-over-month trends are rising. The 12-month change is still 6%. And as an aside, I just want to put in here, services excluding energy are up 7.3% year on year. The Cleveland Fed's median CPI up 7.2% the last 12 months. So the country still has a very big inflation problem, no matter what Biden keeps telling us, and the Fed's in a real pickle. They might want to pause because of contagion worries.
Yes, he's slurring because he's fucking slosh, chatter. He's hammered. He is a very drunk man.
But they may have to raise the target by a quarter because inflation continues high. You know, folks, just to sum up here, this whole episode, high inflation, high interest rates, bank financial worries, crazy left-wing woke policies, infiltrating banks, none of this stuff had to happen. Of course, I could list a zillion other problems, but I'll just say again, it's not America's decline. It's a decline of America's leadership in Washington. We need to wipe the slate clean.
Yeah. Which he was literally a part of.
Really dries up with the rescue plan, which drove us into this inflationary hurricane, that if you did that, interest rates were going to go up. The bank, despite all of that, this bank didn't anticipate interest rates increasing, didn't understand the needs of its customers, who are basically fed cash by venture capitalists. And of course, venture capital investing really dries up when interest rates rise. They've then got people in charge at the bank who are more concerned about ESG and DEI and woke political issues than they are about managing risk. They had no risk manager for 9 months. And then you've got the Fed in San Francisco that, as you mentioned, completely dropped the ball. The Fed they do quarterly stress tests for these banks. This bank had to pass a quarterly stress test.
Where were they?
How on earth could it possibly have passed?
Where were Mary Daly's
right?
bank examiners? Okay, and you know, Mary Daly, look, I hate to get personal, but she is known as a woke Fed head, probably the leading woke. She's a climate person. You have to wonder, Andy. I mean,
Wait. Is he saying that the regulators failed to regulate? That's weird. But why did they fail to regulate? Because they're woke climate people.
They made a lot of mistakes. They bought long-duration bonds. They had a mismatch with their deposits. I understand that, and those are probably ultimately what's brought that bank down. But you know what? The San Francisco Fed, and I don't know, maybe the board, they're all worried about the financial impact of climate change? Really? Not the biggest interest rate hike in 40 years? Not the biggest inflation? No, she's got to bear responsibility because there's a difference.
Yeah, that's why. They were too busy thinking about climate change. Love that. He's trying to make it seem like everyone involved. He literally openly talks about the issue and then says the reason why they didn't focus on that was because of, they got too much gay on the mind. They were too woke. All they were doing was, thinking about, they, them stuff and climate, gay stuff like climate.
Difference between regulations, which are written into print and law, and supervision. It's the supervision part that completely fell down. And I fear that's true for other feds as well. But that's the point I wanted to raise with you. You're a former successful CEO. You have to supervise. You have to look at what your operations are. I assume you probably did it every month. Maybe you did it every week, for heaven's sake. They have to do it every quarter. The bank regulations had nothing to do with it. They didn't do their job. They did not do. Maybe they were happy with $5 billion in a climate fund that nobody ever heard of.
That seems to be what their focus was. And this is somebody that President.
Interesting. I thought banks could self-regulate. Huh. That's weird. So now he wants now he blames the regulators, but not on the virtue of not doing their jobs, but on the virtue of how woke they were. That's awesome.
Banking committee, Patrick McHenry, a very smart guy.
Yep.
He's going to run the House Banking Committee, or what's now called the Financial Services Committee, or whatever it's called. He needs to haul them. He needs to haul this guy Grunberg up. He's the head of the FDIC, who's a woke guy. He's got a board of woke people. This guy Chopra from the Consumer Financial Protection Board. He's another left-winger. All these left-wing ideologues, they're stopping.
Bro, what are you saying? He's like, man, these famously fucking woke guys. Left points out accurately that Silicon Bank lobbied hard for deregulation. Conservatives point out banks seem too focused on diversity and social justice rhetoric. Issues are combined. Corporations virtue signal on identity as a bid to reputation watch and shape government policy. Yeah, but this side is not the reason why. What? That is the main reason. God, Li Fong, what the fuck has happened to this dude, man? There is no both sides of the situation. This is the problem. This is just seasoning. The issue is the right doesn't care about this aspect. They're using this just like liberals are using this. Liberals use this to reputation watch. Right-wingers use this to make it seem like this is the real situation at hand. Why the fuck would you lend it credence either way? That's why we don't spend a lot of time talking about this shit and talking about the material realities instead. This is so fucking stupid. Yes, liberals reputation wash with this kind of shit, and conservatives talk as though it's the only thing that matters. Meanwhile, you already correctly pointed out what actually fucking matters. God damn.
The private sector from selling this bank. And selling this bank would go a long way towards, I think, easing contagion fears. But I think you've got to haul off. When Jay Powell goes in front of the committees, they always talk about the next interest rate, the next quarter of a point. You need to widen the scope of the thing about no more zero interest rates and no more fine-tuning the way and no more dollar fluctuations. I think that's what you're getting at. Really kick butt. That's what they need to do is kick butt. Throw them all out. Kick butt.
Absolutely. And that zero interest rate, where again, we're just going to.
I love that like anyone is working under the assumption that banks are woke now. Like it's so fucking stupid. Like I can't. Like, it is so entirely idiotic. It is impossible. Absolutely impossible to address, almost. Like, I don't know what to say about it.